Thank you so much. That was wonderful. I'd like to introduce Chad Jones, an activist for public health and opioids. Warm place in my heart, because before I did politics, I spent 20 years in youth alcohol prevention. So thank you, Chad.
How are you, Chad?
So first, before talking issues, by my count, we've got 40 days to the primary. And I'm curious, you've got big ideas, bold and badass ideas. How do you, and you're running against somebody from Cruces who's got his own deep pockets, and you're running against a juggernaut. So how do you win this primary in the next 40 days?
We feel like, well, first of all, we're going to win the North and the South. We'll win Santa Fe. And then all we need is 40% of Bernalillo. And we've always known that we spend a lot of time in the North and the South, and we're actually leading in the South. And even that state senator, by the way, typical New Mexico, I grew up with one of them, and I've known the other one since high school. We just feel like the people of New Mexico are looking for new ideas. Our research and all that shows that people in New Mexico are looking at new ideas, new directions. 78% of New Mexicans want big ideas in a new direction. And they're coming to our campaign, and we're picking up more and more support every day. We're confident we're going to win this thing. But yes, we need to win Santa Fe. We need your vote. We need your support. So you can talk about it. You can talk about these big badass ideas. Make sure your big badass idea gets all your friends out there and vote for us. And make sure they register and get out and vote, because that's the key. I mean, you're right. If we don't get out and vote, and we've been targeting specific demographics, we've been targeting specific counties and specific areas that we know we can win. So we feel very confident in the race. We always knew they were going to have more money than us.
Absolutely.
That's why we started spending money in February. So if you haven't seen our commercials, we've actually been spending money since February, because we wanted to get out there early. And so we have a whole strategy behind it. And so I think we're doing okay.
And I think in terms of, there's a lot of dead weight in the roundhouse. So your big ideas would face a lot of opposition from a lot of entrenched Democrats. And how do you fathom being able to move this kind of bold agenda in 4 years with the leadership that we've got that doesn't seem like it's really going anywhere? And I don't mean just the majority and leaders, but really the committees that kill a lot of these bills, like the investment that you're talking about, John Arthur Smith, that would be dead in the water in the Finance Committee. So how could you make that a reality?
Clearly, you're listening to my opponents, not listening to me. I don't need legislative approval to do half the stuff that we're talking about doing. Half the stuff we're talking about doing, we don't need legislative approval.
Awesome.
Again, we're not talking about taking money out, spending money, or taking those monies out of those funds. So I don't need legislative approval. I've literally read the Constitution. I've read the Investment Council Act, Prudent Investment Council Act. So I've looked at the guidelines. I've sat with attorneys, and I've sat with policy people. If I took the money out and went to go spend it on early child education, if I took the money out and went and spent it on a building or something like that, yes, I would need constitutional change. And John Arthur Smith has literally over coffee and Deming this summer told me, you're not going to touch my money. And I had to remind him it's not his money, it's our money.
That's right.
And so all we're talking about is investing. And literally there's programs in our state that are investment programs to small business. We just don't fund them.
Right.
So we're going to fund it with $1 billion. And by the way, we do feel there's just legislation, a push. So in $400 million of it, I don't need legislative approval. It's actually in the statutes that we can take $420 million of the severance fund, which is $5 billion. We literally, by state constitution, we can take that and invest it into New Mexico Technologies tomorrow. Martinez could literally do this with the State Investment Council today.
Yep.
Again, we elect political career politicians who've never thought outside the box, who's never worked outside the private sector, who's never had to think, how do we create opportunities?
Yeah.
So the 2 or 3 main things we want to do, even when Peter and I have talked about a state bank, the state bank's written in our Constitution. So I have been told by policy attorneys that I don't need legislative approval to start a state bank. It's in our Constitution. Now, I've also been told by policy attorneys, you're going to get a fight from the legislators. So again, there's some ifs, ands, or buts about it. But the State Investment Council basically And I've been doing this, I've been walking, I didn't bring it tonight, but I literally been walking around with the Constitution, waiting for my opponents to say, hey, you can't do that. And I know we can. So now some of the tax policies, some of the other things we want to do that I think will streamline small business and opportunities, yeah, we need legislative approval, but I think there's a push ready for it. But again, it's about leadership and it's about willing to change. And so the economic business things we're talking about, I don't need legislative approval.
Okay, great. Changing gears a little bit, Santa Fe has been caught in a little bit of controversy around the Entrada and the history and the legacy of the predominantly 3 different races and ethnicities that have collided and come to coexist here. What do you have to say about like the reality that the dominant narrative of what Entrada has been is not an inclusive history, and there have been calls, when you talk about trying to get more people to vote, to me that means irregular voters, especially in a primary, and I feel like there are a lot of young people of color in Santa Fe and across the state who want to see our public officials and our public leaders actually speak to more inclusive versions of history, and I'm just curious, what's your take as someone who's born and raised in New Mexico, in different parts of New Mexico, of what Entrada has been maybe in your life and in your childhood, and also certainly what it's being called to become now?
That's a good question, and it's important. It's about collaboration and bringing people together, and I understand the history of it. I laugh at New Mexico because I got supporters down south that are upset at me because I don't say I'm Chicano. I got supporters up north that are upset at me because I said I'm Mexicano. All I can tell you is I'm 15th generation New Mexican. My grandfather was 1/4 Apache. So I think it's time we stop fighting and bickering over our history and bickering over, what we did in the past. I think what we need to learn from that history. And what I've been talking to our pueblos and our tribes and our Hispanics and the new, so whether you're 15th generation or you're brand new here, it's time we put our differences aside and collaborate together and solve our problems, because we can look at our history, and our history is very important to us, but we know the native culture, and the native culture is very important to us. So what I've been talking to the native leaders with is it's time we start investing together. We collaborating together. Folks, forget about, not forget about, but let's look at this. We sit on $23 billion. We invested outside our state. When you start talking to our pueblos and our tribes and our endowments and all our organizations, we literally have over $50 billion of capital in our state. And we invest all of it outside the state. All of us do. And I'm not going to say what pueblos and tribes, but I've literally met with presidents and governors, and as I'm meeting with them, they're literally talking to their Goldman Sachs bankers from New York City. And so what I'm telling them about, it's time we all put our differences aside, work together on our history, but we understand and respect our history. But let's start working together on agriculture. Let's start working together on industry. And I've already talked to Tim Keller about this in Albuquerque, our new mayor, which him and I get along and we're good friends. But I've told Tim, I'm going to tell you right now, as governor, if you don't start working with me to expand zoning opportunities and economic opportunities, guess who will work with me? Sandia, Acoma, Isleta, our pueblos and our tribes. We literally can create industries and opportunities within our sovereign nations. And so we have to start working that way, and that way we can improve our schools, improve education. I want to bring jobs and opportunities to there. So I may not have answered your question because I know that, but what I'm saying is it's a collaborative thing. We need to work together. Are we going to celebrate, fiestas? I think there's a way we can all work together and celebrate fiestas together that we've been doing for hundreds of years here, but let's just all work together. Let's not let that divide us to stopping us educate our children, and 25% of our kids live in poverty in our rural communities. So let's not let that divide us. Let's that strengthen us and bring us together. I'm proud that I'm 15th generation New Mexico. I'm proud that I'm part Chicano, Hispanic, Native American, Latino. I'm proud of that. By the way, I'm also proud my grandfather was half Irish. And I have redheaded Hispanic cousins.